What is up, my carefree cucumbers? Today I will be reviewing my new favorite game of all time. This game is Final Fantasy VII Remake, so without further ado, let's get right into it. The first thing I want to talk about is the story of this game. Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to be the first part in a long, practically new series, and this part 1 consists of the Midgar portion of the original Final Fantasy VII on PS1. However, they made this small section of the original game into a long, fleshed out game of its own. In fact, it took me approximately 22 hours to beat the main story. Square Enix put so much detail and love into this part 1 of the Final Fantasy remake and made this small section of the original game feel like its own entire new game, as well as adding tons of new things and even changing some plot points. To avoid any spoilers on the story of this game, I am going to not talk any more about the game's story because I don't want to spoil it for any potential new fans of this game. Now, with the story part of this review done and over with, I am going to be talking about, first of all, why this is my new favorite game of all time, and second of all, why this review took so long, and then at the very end of this video, I'm gonna have a special section. If you didn't know this about me, my favorite games always have a story that I really like and can relate with, and with Final Fantasy VII Remake, it fleshed out a story I already loved. In fact, the original Final Fantasy VII on PS1 was the second game I've ever beaten in my life when I was only 5. Now it's time to see why this is my new favorite game of all time, taking the place of what Skyward Sword once held. So, knowing that I already loved the story of this game and the characters, I couldn't wait to get it, and I got it this year because I thought that it released this year and not last year. First thing I did when I got this game was try to beat the story as fast as I can. So, one day I played 10 hours straight of this game, and then the other days I played 3 to 4 hours, and I beat it in 22 hours. If you've made it this far in the video, I'm just gonna say I will have one small spoiler for the story, and that spoiler is a character dies, a specific character that is really cool. His name is Biggs, and he gets shot to death and dies, and it's really terrible. By the time I finished the story of this game, I was really thinking that this was the best game I've ever played, which it probably is. It's my new favorite game of all time, after all. Now it's time to go more into depth with each character and why I liked them all so much. The first character I'm going to talk about is Barrett, because he's quite possibly my least favorite character in the entire game, because I found the same 3 lines he would repeat over and over were extremely annoying, and there were some sections where I had to play as him and was forced to do it and couldn't skip it, so I heard these same 3 lines over and over and over. I'm not going to repeat what he said because it's kind of inappropriate, but overall, Barrett is my least favorite character, even though he is kind of funny sometimes, and he's a good overall character. I just don't like him. The next character I'm going to talk about is the main protagonist of this game. That character is Cloud Strife. Number one thing that I've noticed, and if you've played any of the Final Fantasy VII games, you probably know of the sword known as the Buster Sword, and that is Cloud's main weapon in the game. In fact, I beat the main story with only the Buster Sword, never using any of the other obtainable weapons. Every once in a while, Cloud will have hallucinations of Sephiroth, which just so happens to be the main villain of this remake, and they added him as the final boss for part 1, even though he's not the boss in the Midgar section in the original PS1 game. If you didn't know this about Final Fantasy VII, the main protagonist, Cloud Strife, was actually traumatized during his best friend's death, and he took on the memories and wishes of his best friend, Zack Fair, as well as the Buster Sword, so he believes that he's a first-class soldier, but in reality, he was merely an infantryman for Shinra. Overall, Cloud just happens to be a really amazing character, and he's very fun to play as, and he's very relatable as well. On to the next character, and the last character. I've saved my favorite character for last. That character is Tifa Lockhart, and she is the best character because she kicks things to death, and Cloud needs a sword. So, she's basically stronger than Cloud. Also, she's the best character just because her character design is awesome, and she was the best character in the original Final Fantasy VII on PS1, so of course she's the best character in the remake. And that's the end of this review. As always, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Don't forget to keep God number one, and I will talk to you later. Bye!